the influence of daily fluctuations in power to weight ratio on my workout performance. So this is first of all unlike data, which is not normal data or study-based data. It is just my experience. So first of all, we can go up and down with the power to weight ratio. There are sports in particular where the power to weight ratio is really important. It is one, if not the limiting factor in basically capping performance. So now, first of all, we have here the numerator and here we have the denominator. Now, all of this can go up and down by therefore increasing or decreasing both. Now, first of all, the overall term goes up if we increase the power, but it also goes up if we decrease the weight. It can also go down if we decrease the power or if we increase the weight. Now, the question is what are these daily fluctuations I am talking about? Mostly I think of the daily fluctuations in two ways. Now, this is a little bit, not that good anymore. I just wrote this with foil pen. Nonetheless, we have weight here, and we also have the 24 hours of the day. So first of all, we have a block of sleep. If we do have a block of sleep, let's just assume for simplicity that's 1/3 of the day. Then after this, usually, at least in my view, I have almost the minimum weight after I stand up. I then actually have the minimum weight if I go to the bathroom once, and so then I actually have the minimum weight. Then I could hydrate again, which would put me maybe here, and then I could also eat something which would maybe put me back here. Now, then it goes basically all day long. If I eat something, and then if I visit the bathroom, it goes down. If I eat or drink something, it goes up. So this is the first cycle. Now, we also have another cycle, which is the energy cycle, which is also kind of capping performance, but also it's not necessarily capping the theoretic performance, but the practical performance one can deliver. One can think of it like this maybe. If one is very alert, then one can drive a good workout performance. But if one is already beginning to become tired, then the workout performance, even though the power might in theory be there still, and maybe 20 minutes after this, or maybe 30 or 90 minutes after this might again be available without additional food or hydration. And of course, there are many different factors, such as hydration and such as the proper electrolyte ratio, or the proper electrolyte, let's just stick with ratio, that are also important and could potentially also cap performance. But let's just stick to power and weight for the purpose of this. So power could also be influenced by many other things, one of which is also food, which I will discuss, but I will not go into hydration and electrolytes and also maybe other things too much. And maybe you didn't sleep that well, which could also be a limiting factor. Now, we have the energy and we have the day. Now, if you sleep once a day, so would be I don't know what it is called, if one sleeps 2 times a day, it would be biphasal, I think, uniphasal sleep maybe, or monophasic sleep. Then one has the most energy, at least in my experience, or I have the most energy, kind of in the morning. Now, if I have the maximum energy in the morning, then I could also take a metric that actually measures kind of my energy based on a few biomarkers, which is my watch. So I do have a Garmin Fenix 7S Pro, and it has body battery. If I have a very good sleep, then I have 100% body battery in the beginning of the day. Now, it actually fluctuates throughout the day. So I now have my subjective experience, but I also have now data which is in the form of Garmin body battery. So what I have here is basically an arch that goes kind of like this down. It also sometimes might go down like this. It depends mostly, I think, on how much stress is measured, at least on Samsung, and then this influences the body battery. Now I could also say that there are, in terms of the subjective things, there are many different other things, but let's stick to kind of an approximation with Garmin body battery to my energy levels, or my energy levels approximated with Garmin body battery. Now, if I do nap during the day, it is kind of similar to sleep, so it is kind of the best part, not the best part, but it is the form of regeneration which seems to restore at least Garmin body battery the most. So if I now have, so it actually goes not down like this. The Garmin body battery shows that it goes down like this, but in terms of my alertness, I do have phases in which I am more alert and less alert. Now there are these ultradian cycles, which I think are derived from the night cycles of sleep, which last maybe 80 to 90 to 100 minutes. In my case, what seems to be the case is that I have cycles which last anywhere from maybe 40, 50 to maybe 90 minutes. It depends on how much energy in total I have, so the absolute amount of energy that is still left, and it also depends on this, so not only on the macro energy, but also on the micro energy cycles. So I seem to have kind of, if I simplify it, And if I nap maybe every 2 hours, or let's just say every 110 minutes or every 100 minutes, or if I say, okay, I do hourly cycles, which are better in terms of tracking this, then it seems to be the case that if I nap for around 10 minutes, or I just lie down, I don't have to actually fall asleep, that I then achieve a pattern which is maybe like this. Of course, there are multiple cycles, but I still want basically the detail here, and I could not draw on for that long. So therefore, there is basically the total amount of energy, the absolute amount of energy one could think of also maybe as this, and then there's also the relative amount of energy which one has compared to maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40, 50 minutes before. Now, both the absolute amount of energy and both the macro fluctuation of the day, but also the micro fluctuations ideally are aligned with then trying to work out. Let's go back to the power to weight ratio, and to do this I again have to keep or bring up this one. Now, the power to weight ratio might also go up if power goes up. Now, if I eat something and I actually can kind of am in a state in which my body needs something to then deliver optimal energy again, and also if I stick to maybe eating carbohydrates and maybe simpler carbohydrates, then I basically increase temporarily at least the power to weight ratio by adding basically additional energy, which then increases the power to weight ratio by increasing the power. Now, I cannot really decrease my weight that much. I, of course, can wait until I need to urinate, and then after it, I basically have an increased power to weight ratio, which is fairly nice. So one could also say, if one wants to work out, and the workout is constrained or fairly constrained by the power to weight ratio, that one waits basically until the next bathroom visit, which could be both, and then one has an increased power to weight ratio. One could think of this as, okay, I want to go on a run, and if I want to go on a run, then I maybe just wait a little bit until basically the next bathroom visit cycle occurs, and if this occurs, then slightly afterwards one has an ideal power to weight ratio. If one then additionally just eats a little bit, one could also increase the power maybe a little bit by maybe ingesting carbohydrates or simpler carbohydrates, and then one has an increased power to weight ratio again. Now let's talk about the different kinds of sports. Currently I do a weekly workout plan of beginning on Sunday with running, then I lift, then I do an interval workout or HIIT, then I do lift, then I do air biking, then I do lift, and then I do a circuit workout. Now, in the past I also sometimes bouldered. There are also other sports which I will shortly discuss, which is swimming and also normal biking. Now, if you play chess, then the power to weight ratio might not matter that much, even though there might be a correlation between the power to weight ratio and maybe mental performance, because, well, if one is very overweight, maybe the total power output might not be that good, and also in terms of the power to weight ratio. So there could also be different links between those, but mostly I want to talk about sports where basically there is a demand where one has to carry one's own body weight, at least to a certain extent, and the greater this extent, the more the power to weight ratio is then determining the sport's performance. If I go now for a run, it seems to be the case that the run is optimally timed with the maximum absolute power, with the maximum macro power, so the maximum body battery I can get or have for the run, which might already have dropped maybe 5 to 10 points, depending on how long I wait, and then ideally also after the first bathroom visit. Now, if I additionally want to maximize my power, but then already decrease my power to weight ratio at least by increasing my weight again, I then maybe might hydrate a little bit and might eat a little bit. But then there is the problem that if I begin to eat, and if my body also realizes, oh, now it's food time, that I might eat too much, which then in terms of the power to weight ratio actually goes again into the negative, whereas before I would have had maybe not that much power because I don't have that many additional carbohydrates, but I do have the better power to weight ratio with the decreased weight because of the bathroom visit right after waking up, and also having the maximum amount of absolute daily energy. So in terms of timing the run, this would be something to consider. Now, in terms of biking, one also carries the weight, but to a lesser extent. So the most important thing, I think, is the wind resistance or the air resistance. And so, of course, one has to carry one's weight also upwards. And if one does the Tour de France and it's going up all the time, then there might be wind resistance as well as also the weight again as kind of determining factors, because one needs to drive up the hill. But compared to running, it might be less. Climbing, for example, also means that with every single step and with every single I don't know what it is called, if you grab another thing with your hands, then you also need to constantly carry your weight. If you do pull-ups, then it also is true that the weight obviously is a large influence on how well many pull-ups one can do. Now, in terms of swimming, what the extent of the weight is again less, or the extent of how much the weight influences all of this is again less, because the water carries a lot, or kind of decreases gravity effectively, one could say, because it carries parts of the body, and one actually does not need to carry oneself at all, one could argue. Now, thereby, if one wants to increase basically power output, or not power output, let's just call it intensity or workout performance, then the power to weight ratio in terms of swimming, for example, might not be that important, and one could basically increase the total performance in sports in which the weight is not that important by increasing the power output, and therefore the sports performance, by just increasing the power output by maybe eating more before. One also has to maybe keep in mind that there might be sports in which the duration again might then coincide with the bathroom visit cycle, and so if one eats too much, then basically this might interrupt the sport. Now, in terms of lifting, the power to weight ratio is only kind of important if one does these particular exercises. Pull-ups, for example, one could also think of a circuit workout in which one has to carry one's own body weight. Also, to a certain extent, I think, at least I become more and more immobile, one could say, the more just the volume I have stored in my gut. There are also other effects of food, such as carbohydrates potentially maybe blocking the stress response, such that one might not be able to mentally drive workout performance that high, at least compared to otherwise with maybe more cortisol, which then I think might be less blocked. So I think carbs block to a certain extent cortisol, for example, or also maybe other things, and put one more in a H&N state. Therefore, if one wants to utilize this, at least if I want to utilize this, speaking only of me, then the power to weight ratio seems to be really important for running, but it also seems to be really important for, sprinting, because it also includes running, but it seems to be, less important for assault bike, less important, so that's what I do on a Thursday, and then also less important on other sports, which basically are not that dependent on at least the weight, and therefore also the power to weight. If I therefore have these sports and the weight is not something I need to carry, then the total sport performance, or the sport performance, might be increased a little bit with increasing the power a little bit by maybe having something before the workout. This could also be true for the run, but with the run, because the weight is then so important, or such an important variable, and therefore also the power to weight ratio is such an important variable, one therefore has to walk the very thin line of eating just a little bit, that then drives workout performance by increasing power, but by not decreasing power to weight ratio too much.